two hosts, Carlos and Dylan.
What's up, Gator Nation? What's up, RollinwithCarlos family? What's up, SI family? We're back on another shower note. I'm sorry we're coming late with this one, but my co-host had travels, and I understand that. But we're back at it. Welcome back, Dylan, and I'm glad you had safe travels.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys for being patient with me here.
On a sour note, what was your perspective of the game this past Saturday?
Yeah, not very happy with the game. I think, it felt like very early on, it was already over. I didn't really feel like we saw fight from a team that needed to show fight. We're at the point in the season where you need to, even if you're not going to win a game against, a top 5 Miami team, you need to show fight. And, obviously the defense did that. The defense has been, putting on a show, putting on a clinic for the first, every game we've seen so far. The defense has been a huge bright spot. The offense somehow looked worse than we've seen all year, in my opinion. I mean, they just looked really bad. I mean, at least, you go back and you look at USF game. All right, they didn't look great, but, there was a couple plays where it's like, if you execute, they look a lot better. You move on to LSU, and it's like, all right, Lagway threw 5 interceptions. That there was toughness there, but, there were some plays that we could have, executed better, and it kind of just been slowly going downhill in this Miami game, other than probably one drive that we scored on and the drive that we went for 4th down and didn't get it. It felt like there was nothing going for Florida. It was embarrassing. So, I mean, watching it on TV instead of, being on the field, being in the press box, it was nice to be able to kind of relax and see it from a different view, but it was not fun. I was pretty disappointed, and I don't know. It feels like time's running out on this team to do anything this year.
Do you feel like DJ was going through the motions? I got this question based off a clip Nick De La Torre posted earlier today of DJ throwing a nice ball, and I'm like, yeah, but he had nobody in his face. And then Sheldon from High Top said, I would like to see the lower half because he doesn't seem like himself. So, I mean,
yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that he's not himself this year. I mean, people like to say we jumped the gun on him, and people are trying to make it out to seem like he was, never as good as we made him out to be. But he was. Last year, you turn on the tape, he was a really good quarterback. He, anyone that watched the tape and anyone that really dives into college football would tell you that he was a really good quarterback last year. This year, I don't know if it's scheme. I don't know if it's the offensive line. I don't know if it's injury. My guess is it's all three coming together to make what we see there out on the field. But clearly something's not right. I wouldn't necessarily say going through the motions. I think, just the type of kid he is. I mean, Napier mentioned it in his teleconference today. And the fact that people are on Twitter, everywhere saying, oh, he's faking the injury or he's just shutting himself down. That's not the type of kid Lagway is. Every single person that's ever met him knows that. He's a competitor. He's a great kid. I think, it tears him apart that he's not playing very well. So, I don't think he's necessarily going through the motions. I just think, something's not right. Whatever it is, if it's, all of those things I mentioned, or if it's just one thing, whatever it is, it's not right. And, it's tough because I don't necessarily know when it's going to look right. There's not many games left where, you can say, all right, Lagway, we need to see it before the season just feels like a complete bust.
That's another thing I was going to ask you. Is the season over basically? Because they got to rattle off the rest of the games if there's any playoff chances.
I think I think the good part about Florida's schedule and also the bad part is you have so many good teams on that schedule that if some miracle, right, some Disney Gator miracle, they just turn it around on offense. They have this offense that we thought they could have this year. The defense stays consistent, and they start, coming out here and killing teams or, at least beating teams like we saw last year, surprising some teams. I mean, you have so many good teams on that schedule remaining that you could definitely save your season that way. And I mean, it's going to be obviously basically impossible to make the playoffs, but at the same time, if you go win out, which I'm not trying to tell anyone that we're going to win out. I think there's probably a 99% chance that we don't. But if they do, you have a argument there, and I think, so I don't think the season's necessarily over just off that fact alone. But the way that they've looked on offense, I need to say on offense, because their defense has looked phenomenal. The defense deserves no disrespect. Yes. They honestly look like one of the best in the nation, and I don't think anyone can even argue that. I think every team we've played so far, even the delusional Miami fans will tell you that the defense is really good. So, I mean, with the way this offense looks, I don't think there's a chance that we can turn the season around, but there's always that hope that something clicks.
Do you believe the players are frustrated? There was a picture of Bot at the end of the game on his basically on his knees, holding his head, and it seemed like he's like putting all his effort in, and he's like, we're not getting the returns in return. So it seems like at least one of them, or maybe a couple, are frustrated.
Oh, I mean, 100%. And honestly, if they weren't frustrated, that would be more concerning to me than if they are frustrated. You're 1-3. You came into the year expecting to be, one of the best teams in the country. I know some people didn't believe that, but that was the belief inside the locker room. That was the belief inside the facility. And, you're 1-3. So you should be, feeling down. I think it's not fair to the players. Like you mentioned, Jaden Ball has been phenomenal this year. Jaden Ball is one of, if not the best player, I would say the best player on Florida's offense. Yes. I mean, there's been plenty of players that have put it out there on the field, have looked really good, and it sucks for them because, you can't blame it on one person or one thing, but I also think you can't blame it on the players. I really think that, we have the talent. I mean, obviously, there's a couple players that are underperforming, but it really sucks. And I think that's when you go into when does this regime need to go? I don't want to bury Billy Napier. I'm not the type of guy that's going to come out there and attack Billy Napier. But when you come to that, when do we need to move on? It's hard to watch these players who have the talent go out there every week and lose in a way that they should never be losing in with the talent that they have. And I think that kind of gives you, at least in my opinion, that gives you a push that, all right, this needs to be done soon, because it's unfair to the players that they have to go there every week, get embarrassed on the field. I mean, it was embarrassing against Miami. And, the only thing you can say is, oh, well, the players are talented. It's something else. So, it's unfair to them. But I definitely think they're mad. I wouldn't say they're quitting on the team. I don't think this team's ever going to quit. But I do think there's a lot of emotion in being 1-3, and I think that's pretty unfair to them.
Did you see what former coach Urban Meyer stated about the $21 million buyout? Do you believe there's any truth to it, or is he talking out of his butt?
I mean, I would say there's truth to it in just the fact that that's kind of, the obvious that buyout makes it harder than a lot of fans want to believe to fire a coach. You got to give them $20 million to stay away from your program. That kind of sucks. But at the same time, I see a lot of people kind of taking it as gospel, kind of like, saying, oh, Urban said it, so Billy Napier's here for another year, or Billy Napier's here for another 2 years. And with respect to Urban Meyer, Florida legend, I'm sure most of the fan base would welcome him back with open arms. But he's not currently in the organization. He's not currently a Florida Gators coach. He's not currently a Florida Gators, he's not a part of the operation. So I wouldn't necessarily say he really knows what's going on. I think he's more kind of speculating, and I think we all are speculating. I don't think one person, outside of that office and those offices know what's going to happen. So I wouldn't take his word as gospel. I think there's some truth to it because, buyouts are there for a reason. It makes it harder to fire coaches, and it gives coaches a little cushion to lean back on. But I mean, you gotta believe at some point, if you hate Scott Strickland or you love him, at some point he works for the University of Florida, and this is not the standard of football that they expect.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta believe that, buyout or not. I mean, you're pretty rich. The University of Florida is not poor. We'll leave it like that. So you expect that won't stop them when the time comes, and I expect that. If this doesn't turn around miraculously, I expect that pretty soon.
Have you heard any murmurs or something through the grapevine of the UAA or Florida Victorious working towards a buyout? Because there was rumors last year that if we didn't turn around the season, Billy was gone.
Yeah. I think I haven't heard anything too set in stone. I haven't heard anything that made me say, oh, all right, the money's there. I haven't heard anything that says, oh, all right, we're just counting out the hours till we get the notification.
Yeah.
That being said, obviously, I mean, it's not even through the grapevine. If you go on Twitter and you find the right booster, you see that they're upset. You see them tweeting stuff. I think a lot of the big money people in this organization are kind of done with Billy Napier the same way that they were last year.
Yeah.
And the difference this year is last year you could say, all right, let him turn it around. And then when we have the type of roster that we really think can compete, that will be the time to decide. This year, there's no telling the boosters, oh, give Billy Napier time. He's had enough time. He's built the roster that we all hope for. He's built the roster that, honestly, truthfully, I think any coach in this country, other than a select few that have elite rosters, would take this roster 10 out of 10 times over their roster. You know what I mean? Like, there's no more, oh, we need the talent. He needs his guys. So I think the boosters are mad, and I don't think there's a lot, stopping them from continuing to be mad. And we'll see where that goes. I haven't heard anything about, it being in the works yet, but I have heard that they're not very happy.
Gator Nation, before I ask my co-host the next question, I want to temper down some rumors that have been going around about Kiffin. I saw a video basically today about his daughter moving to Ole Miss and asking him to stay at Ole Miss. In order for Kiffin to come to Florida, it is my belief we would have to throw the kitchen sink and move his daughter too, because he spoke about it basically teary-eyed in the video saying, I stayed because she asked me to, and I want to be a present father. So from my perspective, if Billy were to get fired, Kiffin's not going to be the top choice.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. I think, it's a lot harder than I think a lot of people think it would be a layup to get Lane Kiffin. But I don't believe it's out of the realm of possibility, just because, even mentioning that, he mentioned that he was ready to accept that Auburn job before they did that.
Yes, he was.
And I think, no disrespect to Auburn. I know I got some friends that cover Auburn, but Florida's a different beast. That's a different job. I mean, it's a lot harder to turn that down, So I think, Florida has everything that Lane Kiffin would want, considering football-wise, considering resources, considering location. I think it's more of, like you mentioned, how can we manage to, help other stuff off the field, help his kids get here and stuff like that.
Exactly. Any updates on potential returns besides some of the big names that got recently hurt? And one of the big names is completely gone for the season. I don't have to name him. His last name is Johnson. Any updates on maybe Dallas Wilson or somebody else showing up for week 4 for us, week 5 of the season?
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have press conferences this week because it's the bye week. So, we haven't been able to talk to Billy yet. That being said, last week, the huge news was he said Dallas Wilson was going to be practicing this week. He told us that last week. So, I haven't heard how that's going, but you expect him to be out there. I think the real concern with Dallas Wilson, and I hate to say it because it kind of feels like, kind of sketchy, but at the same time, it's no disrespect to the kid, and it's no, hate to the kid. At this point, it's kind of smart. You're a freshman receiver who's missed already 4 games into the season. The question is how much do you want to push your injury in a year that looks lost? I think that's the concern with Dallas Wilson, is just how much do you rush him back on the field? And then the other thing is you don't want them rushing him back because he's this talented guy, and they're thinking we need to start winning games now. We need to push him out there when he's not ready. That being said, I've mentioned this a couple times. I don't think his injury was, necessarily too worrisome at the start of the year. I think, they've already played it a little slow. So I'm excited to see if he's out there. We'll talk to him on Monday, Napier, and we'll probably get more on that. I think, that being said, he still can play in 4 games before he redshirts. So he could play the next 4 games, at that point where, 9 weeks into the season, 10 weeks into the season.
Yes.
And then, he can rethink about it from there. But I would expect him back. George Gums, I haven't seen anything on. I think he really wanted to play against Miami. And obviously, everyone on that roster wants to play against in-state rival. So we'll see with him. But yeah, we haven't been able to talk to Napier. So this is all kind of speculation. I think the one I'm watching is Dallas Wilson, because we can either hear that it's going really well, or we can hear that, they're still kind of taking it slow with him, which, is completely understandable in the circumstance that we're at right now.
I'm hearing rumors and reading rumors that one of our commits is on flip watch. I'll give you the letters, and maybe you've heard something.
I'm already ready for it, I think.
First letter D, last name of the first name, last name, first letter of the last name G.
Oh, you're talking DJ. I thought you were talking MD, Marquez Daniels. You're talking Davion Gross?
Yes.
I
saw something about him being possibly on flip watch to Miami.
I think you're talking about Marquez Daniels.
Oh, then it's Marquez.
Yeah.
Okay.
See, Davion, I haven't heard anything from.
I confused them then because I looked up real quick.
Marquez he was in Miami for the game, he was visiting the Hurricanes. He just said that he's going to have an official visit with the Hurricanes. So there's a lot of smoke there. I'm actually give you a little teaser here. Well, I've been supposed to have an interview with him. I sent him some questions over. He said he'll get them over to me. So I'll have more on that a little later, hopefully. But
you think we can get him on the show?
I couldn't promise that, Carlos. I couldn't promise that. But he, I think the smoke is definitely there. He's a really talented player. He's kind of been an underrated recruit in a way. It was more like I think Auburn was pushing for him hard because he's from Alabama. And other than that, I don't think there was a lot of smoke on Miami. So that would be interesting to see. Miami has Samorion Wingo already committed. I kind of look at those two as similar, wide receiver prospects. They're both big play guys, go up and get it, contested guys. That being said, Miami will take 1 million of those guys. They took Joshua Moore last year, who's kind of familiar prospect. Yeah. So yeah, that one's concerning. I would, if I had to rank it 1 to 10 on how concerned I am, I'd say 9. But at the end of the day, with how Florida has looked on the field and the stability around their coaching, I think almost every player, can realistically be put in a concerning rating because, at the end of the day, if your coach that recruited you there is gone, there's still players that will stay, but there will be players that go. You mentioned Davion Gross. That's the one in my opinion, I wrote an article about it. That's my favorite commit so far that Florida's gotten. I think he has a chance to be one of the better wide receivers in college football. I mean,
Agreed.
his film is phenomenal. I love it.
Agreed.
And he's kind of stayed low, in my opinion, from when he committed. You haven't heard much from him. Sadly, he's been injured, during the high school year so far, so he hasn't played yet in his senior season. But, Florida has wide receivers. I mean, not to take away from Marcos Daniel, I think that is still an amazing recruit. I mean, you watch his film, it's really good. He dominates in 6-on-6. This offseason he was doing great things. But Florida has, Justin Williams committed, Davion Gross committed, and Marcos Daniel committed. I don't think, if that does end up coming to fruition, hopefully it doesn't. But if it does, I think Florida will still have a decent haul if they can hold on to those guys.
Okay. Guys, I'm going to go into some PFF grades. Thanks to Brandon Olson from Locked On Gators. He's posting, and I follow him. I didn't know he was posting the PFF grades. The highest graded offensive lineman during the Miami game, senior Jake Slaughter at 74.6. The overall grade for the offensive line was above 40, but you have two offensive linemen that graded out at 0.0. And that was right tackle Bryce Lovett and right guard Damian George. So I don't know what to tell you guys. It's kind of interesting that we're seeing that. I'm also going to read to you some percentiles from the game. And these percentiles, if I read them to you, you're going to see the colors in the video because the editor is going to put them in. But anything in purple, it means we stunk up the joint. EPA per play, negative 0.33. Success rate, 29% for our Florida Gators. Yards per play, 2.71. EPA per dropback, negative 0.81. EPA per rush, negative 0.03. Yards per dropback, 2.6. Explosive plays, 8%. Third down success rate, 7%. Red zone success rate, 50%. The question is, how many times were we in the red zone? Defense run stuff rate, 9%. How do those numbers sound to you, Dylan?
It sounds like exactly what I was watching on the football field. That was not good.
Any final thoughts? And I'm working on trying to get Brandon on the show. I messaged him earlier. If anybody from the Gators SI program watches this show, you're more than welcome to be on any of the pregame shows that we have. Maybe Dylan can reach out to some of you guys.
I got you.
Supposedly Dave from iTop is tentatively scheduled to come back for the Texas week. We're not going to do a pregame show for this week because there is no game.
Oh, so no pick'em.
Oh, you want to do the pick'ems?
It's up to you. I'm loving.
I'll do the pick'ems.
We'll do.
But are you available? Show. Are you available tomorrow?
Yeah. We'll do a pick'em show.
What time?
Whenever. I'll text you. Probably 4.
Okay.
I'll text you though.
That's fine. Guys, you know where to follow Dylan. But Dylan, do your spiel, and we'll get out of here. And I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you. My final thoughts. I wrote down some PFF grades I thought were interesting. I thought it was interesting. The two highest graded offensive players.
You froze a little bit.
Am I here though? I'm good.
Yeah, I hear you now.
Okay.
You froze a little bit.
The two highest offensive graded players from what I saw, Jaden Ball and Jacoby Jackson, both running backs. I thought that was interesting. I mean, when we found success on offense, I thought it was from the run game. You saw a couple drives where they randomly, got a push on the offensive line. You mentioned it, Bryce Lovett. Rod Kearney also had a really bad grade. That just goes to the whole offensive line, and that goes back to Lagway. everyone wants to blame it all on Lagway, and I do believe that there's a lot to blame on Lagway, but
Yes.
the offensive line has not been what Florida expected or anyone expected. They're supposed to be, a lot better than they were. That's been pretty disappointing. Shout out J. Michael Sturdivant. A lot of fans are turning on him. A lot of fans are saying he's not talented. I believe that it's a scheme thing more than anything. I think that he's a really talented player. He was the third highest graded Florida player. I mean, he only got 2 targets, but, he was the third highest. I think, that's a huge reason why our offense is not going well, is they just haven't gotten him involved, especially deep. That was where he excels at, and they haven't done that. On the defensive side, I've been tweeting about him. I've been writing about him. I've been posting about him. Cormani McClain, man.
I did a video, guys. You can go watch it.
Go watch Carlos's video. Cormani McClain is breaking out in front of our eyes. I'm super excited. I mean, if you didn't see my tweet, he ranks PFF-wise, he ranks, top 10 in the SEC amongst corners in a lot of stats. He's the best, one of the best Gators defenders in a lot of stats. I think he's breaking out, and I mean, he's only a redshirt sophomore, so that's, if Florida can retain him, which, it's always when your coach might be 1 foot out the door, it's hard to know who will stay, but I think if Florida retains him, he's on his way to becoming a great NFL player. I think a great NFL pick. Another player, Dijon Johnson, it sucks that he was out because he was our second highest graded corner.
Yep.
I think he was really good this year. Someone impressed me, and I was surprised how much he played, is Kofi Asar. Kofi Asar got on the field 36 snaps against Miami with gums out. I not to toot my own horn here, but in the offseason, I wrote an article about how Kofi Asar is very similar in, just his journey here to George Gums. I think that, they're kind of similar players. Obviously, George Gums has turned into a phenomenal player, and Kofi Asar still needs to prove. But he finished the game with 5 tackles, one of the best on the teams, 67.6 PFF grade. I saw some impressive plays from him. Shout out Jaden Woods. He got his first career sack. That was awesome. I think, he caused trouble to one of the best offensive lines in the country, so that's huge to see. And then lastly, I know I'm ranting here a little. Lastly, Brendan Bett. I mean, there's not a lot of love for Brendan Bett right now. Obviously, the USF game, it was tough.
He brought that on himself.
It was deserved. It was deserved, but I'm a huge Brendan Bett fan.
I am too.
Considering,
Don't get me wrong.
I think he's a very talented player. He finished the game with a 67.6. I know he got banged up, so that's something to watch for. But, I'll continue to beat the Brendan Bett drum that I think it sucks that Caleb Banks not going to play, because I think those two would have been electric together.
That would have helped our defense so much.
Oh, yeah. But I still think he's a really good D tackle. I think he's being slept on a little. So that's my rant. To go into where you can find me, Gators on SI, Dylan Olive _UF. I'll get some guys on the show for us. We don't want Cam because, he sucks. Everyone hates him. But we'll get Kyle, and maybe Tyler comes back. And then, we'll see you Thursday. We'll do some pick'ems. We got to see where we're at. I had a terrible Thursday. I had a terrible last week. I was watching the game.
I got to calculate them tomorrow because I took it kind of slow because of the fact that we don't have a game. So I took it kind of slow, but I'll calculate them tomorrow.
I think that was my worst week. I missed a bunch. So we'll try to bounce back for you guys on
Guys, one more question before we get out of here for Dylan. What do you think of the schedule for 2026, 2027, and 2028 and 2029? It seems like we're going to be rotating some schools.
Yeah. I mean, the first thought is obviously disappointment, just because we're playing Kentucky and South Carolina every year, which I don't feel like is a super fun game and a super strong rivalry. I'd much rather it have been Tennessee and LSU, but it's like devil on one shoulder and angel on the other. One side, I really want to see the rivalries and I really want to have fun. Other side, you get a lot easier of a schedule now. You get Kentucky and South Carolina aren't the same caliber of programs. So I think that's exciting, especially if, I'm not counting Billy Napier out, but especially if you have a new coach next year and in these next few years, you want him to have kind of that easier schedule so it's easier to build the program back up. Other than that, I'm just super excited for kind of some unique matchups we're getting. I mean, we're getting to play in Auburn for the first time since I forgot what it was.
Oh, years. I was like a teenager last time we played them, I believe.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that rivalry, as a student that just graduated last year, spent the last 4 years, I didn't even get to experience that rivalry. I haven't even gotten to see them play. Like,
welcome to the club.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't either.
I'm super excited to see that kind of spark back up. I'm excited to see Bama every year. I mean, I know it's not the same Bama. Obviously, we saw that week 1 against FSU, but it's always exciting to play Bama. I think, my freshman, or I think it was my sophomore year when we played. Oh, no, freshman year. When we played Bama, that was an awesome game. That was my first real experience of a big game in the swamp. So that will be a good memory for me, and I'm excited for that. Oklahoma, we play, for the first time, I forgot since when. So a lot of new exciting matchups. I was a little disappointed because you'd love to play Tennessee every year. I mean, that's a free win for Florida every year.
Yeah, we're going to skip them. It's 1 year yes, 1 year no.
Yeah. Which, at the end of the day, you look at it and it's not that bad because you just have to wait a year. But at the same time, it's a little selfish thing. Like, oh, I want to see us play LSU every year. It's going to suck when, God forbid, we lose to LSU 1 year. Now you got to wait 2 years to get your get back. Now they own you for 2 years. So that kind of sucks. But all in all, I think it's super exciting just because we're going to see a lot of unique games and we're going to see a lot more faces. I mean, even Vandy. I know that Vandy in the past has not been exciting, but imagine if we got to play Diego Pavia, last year or this year. That would have been fun. So I think they're kind of shifting their program. That's a fun one. So I'm just excited for the new stuff.
One more question and then we're out of here. Do you think that will hurt our playoff chances because we're playing two second or third tier teams in the SEC, even though right now we're in that group? We generally are not in that group. So when we get back to what we used to be, will that hurt our playoff chances playing Kentucky, South Carolina all the time?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things to look at there. I mean, for one, teams in the SEC change all the time. I mean, if you told me that Vandy was going to be one of the best teams in the SEC this year, I would have told you. If you told me that 3 years ago, I would have said, all right, like, I don't know what you know what I mean? Like, I would have laughed you off.
Yeah,
so,
of course.
These teams are always changing. I mean, even South Carolina was expected to be a really good team this year. I didn't personally believe that, not to toot my own horn again, but I didn't think they were going to be good. I told you guys.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. They've been okay.
Yeah. But that's the one thing is, you never know. I mean, we could get 2 years down the road and Kentucky could somehow fired Mark Stoops, who is getting paid to go 6-6, and somehow they're, a really good team. So that's one. And then two, at the end of the day, with the new format, I think it's a lot easier to make it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot more spots. You have a lot more leeway. I think, if you're winning 11 games, you're in the SEC, you're in. So I think, it kind of helps because you're getting more wins. I know we all looked at the schedule this year and we said, oh, look, we have a lot of room to lose. If we lose 3 games, we could still make the college football playoff.
Yeah.
But that was nice to have, but it's also not nice because you're expecting to lose 3 games. When instead, next year we might look at our schedule and say we have a good team. We're not going to say, oh, well, you have to account for losing to LSU in Death Valley, and you have to count, if you're saying, oh, we got to go to Kentucky, now you're saying, okay, that's a win. So I think, I think it will honestly help just looking at it because you looked at it this year and you said, thank God we have a hard schedule so we can lose some games, and now we're 1-3 and we're out of it anyways. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, it's just going to be about, can we win and can we continue to win? I think, if you win 10 games and you look like one of the best teams in the nation and you're in the SEC, you'll make the college football playoff, even if you're playing South Carolina and Kentucky, every year.
That is true. Guys, one more update because it just popped in my head. Next year, remember we play Georgia in Atlanta in the Superdome. I think it's a Superdome, or what's it called now?
Mercedes-Benz, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back in my day, it was something like the Superdome. Then we play them in Tampa. So we're not going back to Jacksonville to 2028, 2029, I believe. Yep. So I just wanted to throw that in there so you guys don't go buy tickets. And then you cuss Jacksonville out, and Jacksonville has nothing to do with what's going on because the stadium is being remodeled. So outside of that, we'll talk to you on Saturday morning with the Pick'em Show. And like always, stay positive, stay on your grind, and go Gators.